as a child, it was very important to my mom that whenever we received a gift, that we write a thank you to the person. And it was something that my mom hoped would stay part of who we are. That understanding that we should show a sense of gratitude, a sense of thanksgiving for what we've been given. I'm sure many of you learned the same lesson from your mother. So, as we hear the gospel today, it is interesting to recognize that only 10% of the people showed a sense of gratitude towards God. And I'm not so sure that that number is so far off today. Let us really ask ourselves, do we really show gratitude to God for the good that He does for us? Do we really even notice that He does? I mean, think about it. That's sort of a point Jesus was making today in the gospel story. Only one seemed to notice that he had been healed and where that healing came from. I think part of the problem is for us, we can take for granted the good that God does for us, because what we really see is we look at the good that happens in our lives, and much of it we pin on ourselves. I worked hard, I did this other thing. We come up for reasons why I'm responsible for the good in my life and the good that happens to us. We even hear it sort of in the way Americans think about people should, make it on their own, pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. That's about as far from Christian doctrine as you can get. It's out and out heresy, actually. It goes against everything that Jesus teaches us. We have to recognize that truth, that we can accomplish no good on our own. None. Zero. Any good we accomplish starts with God and always begins with God. Any good we can accomplish comes either from the gifts that God has given us, our talents, our ability to work hard. That's all a gift from God. And it comes from our cooperation with the grace that God pours forth into our lives. Apart from God's grace, we could accomplish nothing of value, nothing of meaning. But do we even notice that? Or do we come to take for granted the good that God does for us? And that's really at the heart of today's message. What is it that we are doing with our lives? We have a great example in the first reading of someone who recognized the good that God did for him, Naaman, who had worshipped all of these other gods. And once he was healed of his leprosy, he recognized the truth that there really is only one God. But we have to ask ourselves, are we acting like Naaman? Have we given up the other gods of our life? And if we're honest with ourselves, we do have other gods. Self-centeredness, self-sufficiency, pride, lust, greed, our lack of fidelity to God or our faith. And the list could go on and on and on. But the truth and the reality is all of these are really gods of our own creation. We give them, in a sense, the responsibility for the good of our life. What we need to come to recognize is what our lives are intended to be about. And it's actually what we do right here. It is about the Eucharist, which means what? Thanksgiving. What we do here, we gather to give thanksgiving to our God in the way that God desires us to give that thanksgiving. It is about opening ourselves to that life that is truly centered in gratitude and thanksgiving, and we are strengthened through the Eucharist to do it, because in this moment, why do we gather? We gather to worship. Why do we gather? We gather to give thanksgiving to God for the saving actions of Jesus Christ. And in this moment, we come to participate in those saving truths and reality. We come to participate in his death and resurrection in order to strengthen us to live out that in our lives. Ultimately, as St. Augustine would tell us, we must become what we receive. We must become the Eucharist. We must become the body of Christ. Ultimately, the purpose of the Eucharist is to strengthen us to become Eucharistic people, a people who have hearts of gratitude and live lives of thanksgiving to God. And how do we do that? How do we grow in that attitude of gratitude? How do we grow in that life of thanksgiving? And it's simple. It's again about becoming what we receive. Who do we receive in the Eucharist? Jesus. Jesus gives himself to us so that we can be strengthened to become his presence in the world. That others will come to see Christ in and through us. And that's all that God asks of us, is that we bring to others what it is that we have received. That we bring to others the great gift that is now ours through the gift that Christ gives us, the gift of himself. May we therefore then show our gratitude, our thanksgiving, by truly becoming what we receive, by truly becoming the presence of Christ